Mrs. Goldstein was unusually cheerful during the Yom Kippur service, particularly during the sermon, while the rest of the congregation was of somber effect. During the procession, when the rabbi passed by her seat, he saw what she was doing, and after the service confronted her. "Mrs. Goldstein, instead of listening to my sermon, you were reading a virulently anti-Semitic publication, and you were smiling about it. What's going on?" "Rabbi," she explained, "your sermons are depressing. According to you, the Jewish people are on the verge of disappearing due to low birth rate, white supremacists, Islamic militants, and assimilation. But here, in the Liberty Bell report, I am reading about how the Jews own the banks, control Hollywood, and run the government. What a wonderful world." Indeed, Jewish privilege is going to be on the agenda this year, whether we like it or not. This is not about the classic tropes of anti-Semitism. The Jew as Christ killer is rather passé. Jewish criminality, including sexual depravity, favored Nazi lines, gets little traction despite wealthy celebrity, even rabbinic Jews in the news. But the notion of Jewish privilege is increasingly popular on the left and on the right, and poses a particular existential danger. It requires a thoughtful response. I'm going to give you mine. If you have a better one, please share it. Background. The idea of white privilege is a newish restatement of the racial discrimination problem. Well-meaning, prosperous white people find it easy to say, "I'm not racist. My ancestors had nothing to do with slavery. I'm colorblind. I donate to the United Negro College Fund." They are saying, "I didn't do it. I'm not responsible." The idea of privilege flips over that answer. It says, due to the legacy of Jim Crow, resource theft from indigenous Indians, redlining, job discrimination, segregation, white people enjoy advantages, a built-in head start. Whites have capital, money to buy credentials, friends in high places, legacy seats, all the advantages of a got there first majority culture. You didn't do anything? The rest of us are disadvantaged because of your privilege. You are not off the hook. While the poor, uneducated, underprivileged white masses don't seem swayed by this construct, it does resonate with some white people who do enjoy wealth and position. Now we turn to Jewish privilege. At the outset, we have to abandon any pretext of historic context or data-driven analysis. Jewish privilege has to do with the claim that Jews are disproportionately wealthy, overrepresented in elite institutions and professions, control the economy and government. The Jews are the ones really enjoying what others call white privilege, and even a white supremacist can agree with that thesis. My ancestors were classified on US government forms in the 19th and 20th centuries as Hebrews in the column for race, just as millions of Soviet Jews were labeled as Hebrews, not Russians, for nationality on their identity cards. I identify wholly as a Jew and not as a white person, though I am happy to accept any better treatment I might be offered from those who view me as white. My family history, my people's history, is so different in the ways that count from that of white Europeans that I insist on my identity and reject the assignment some others would prefer. I reject the application of white privilege analysis to the Jewish people. Instead, I will entertain the notion of Jewish privilege, a notion problematic and troubling in its own special way. Arguing about the specifics, the content of Jewish privilege, usually doesn't work. Here's what such a response, such a point-by-point answer might look like. Wealth. Jewish households are in fact above the national average in wealth and income, but not quite so much if you consider that the average age of the Jew in America is twice that of the average Hispanic person, or that Jewish households have fewer members, or that Jews culturally promote education, which correlates to wealth and income, or if you compare Jews to Asians and not just to everybody else. Jews are disproportionately represented as billionaires in the United States, but not in Saudi Arabia or China. Jews are wildly overrepresented among Nobel Prize laureates and world-class chess champions, but underrepresented among US presidents, five-star generals, drug dealers, global CEOs. Jews are overrepresented as attorneys, but underrepresented as FBI and CIA agents and prison guards. If we list only fields in which Jews are overrepresented, it looks like Jews control the world. If we list only those in which Jews are underrepresented, it looks like Jews are excluded and dispossessed. Selecting a few choice data points does not demonstrate power or control, nor does it make a logical, fact-based case for privilege. There is the claim of Jewish privilege in academia, that Jews are overrepresented in elite schools. Here too, the picture depends on which facts we select. Jews were completely excluded from many of those institutions for centuries. So our statistical result will depend on whether we choose to quantify the Jewish presence in the 1 year, say 1980, or the 100-year period up to 1980. Our statistical result will depend on whether we look at schools in cities that have high Jewish populations, such as New York, Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles. And it will depend on whether you look at 1980 or 2020. It will depend on whether you take into account the fact that Jews attend college, any college, at rates several times that of the national average, which is explained in part by the elevated value Jews place on education. It is a choice. I've made a practice of writing factual point-by-point responses to false and misleading criticisms of Israel. If you actually want to improve Israeli society, there are plenty of real problems to address. The need to concoct fake problems arises only for those wishing to delegitimize or demonize Israel. It turns out that for people who are fundamentally anti-Israel or anti-Jewish, facts and logic are not persuasive. Disprove one bogus claim, and they will trot out the next, even if one contradicts the other. My purpose in responding to these particular claims is to prevent our Jewish readers from being misled and dragged down by the onslaught of negativity, and not by a hope of changing the minds of anti-Jewish or anti-Israel propagandists. It is for that reason, for the sense of confidence and pride of our Jewish people, that I raise the topic of Jewish privilege. We should understand the idea of white privilege and be concerned about white supremacists. America has a huge problem having to do, in large part, with the legacy of Jim Crow and the genocide against indigenous Indians. It's big, multifaceted problem. But it is downright wrong and unhelpful for Jews to speak negatively about white people in general. I am offended when people say greedy white landlord, because white is not the problem there. The appellation unreasonably seeks to make every white person an accessory, to implicate every white person as greedy. It is not because I'm worried about white people being victims of racism. I am concerned that the analysis, the ethics, the idea, the language of anti-white speech is wrong. The serious threat of white supremacism is not going to be cured by giving them a taste of their own medicine, but rather by behaving and speaking in a better way. For Jews to join in using anti-white speech does not show solidarity or build bridges with those who stand against white supremacy and who suffer from it, as much as it degrades discourse and validates the use of confused thinking. It is not a productive way to address the issues of identity and ethnic origins within the Jewish world, let alone our relations with our neighbors. In considering that greedy white landlord, I believe it is usually more productive to discuss behavior, not ethnicity or skin color. Economic and material realities are more fundamental than the grand falloon of race. And on this point, Marxist analysis is largely in accord with mainstream Talmudic thinking. Our sages insisted that fundamentally, all humans share the same origins, and therefore none of us can claim to be of a superior race. It is also wrong for us to respond with a Jewish supremacist position, as some do. The Torah is clear that our special status is not due to size, physical might, or other factors. Our special status is at the outset unearned and not a matter of entitlement. The Torah is clear that God loves all people, each being special in its own way, the way a parent has a special love for each of their children. It is correct, though insufficient, to respond by pointing to the good works of the Jewish people. Jewish contributions to medicine, math, science, popular technology, humanities, and good governance are ways that we act responsibly for the benefit of all. We see this wonderfully enacted in our Becky community, whose members are deeply engaged in promoting the well-being of the local civic community and beyond. Even during the pandemic, our members acting for Becky and as individuals in their jobs and as volunteers have worked so hard to make life better for others. This is a normal, but not universal behavior, and one so characteristic of our people here in New Haven. It is also right to support people working for justice, whether that is the Black Lives Matter movements, refugee aid, or minority rights in Israel. The Black Lives Matter movement does not wish to be led by non-Black rabbis. Rather than flaunting Jewish privilege, we need to be good listeners, supporters, allies, and followers. But we rightly speak with our own loud Jewish voices on any issue that concerns us. I worry that this Jewish privilege line can negatively impact our own self-confidence and sense of purpose. I'm concerned that our Jews on campus will be beaten up. The experience in Europe 100 years ago, in Hungary, Romania, Austria, Germany, where Jews were highly represented in the professions, in industry and in commerce, the response to the complaint against Jewish privilege was in part the original self-cancellation of suicide and conversion, which were rampant in those places in that era, and which of course all of which brought along complete destruction. An honest assessment of our place in the world should inform our direction and ambition, not cancel it. My response to the charge of Jewish privilege is that anyone who thinks that my Jewish privilege has to do with the fact that there are a bunch of Jewish billionaires or lots of Jewish doctors and doctorates, anyone who thinks that is misunderstanding and way underestimating the power of Jewish privilege. My response to the charge of Jewish privilege is that yes, I am privileged to be a Jew. I am part of a people with a continuous 3,500-year history and legacy of law and literature, a vibrant homeland flowing with milk and honey, and a divine covenant that provides us with a path to decency, holiness, and prosperity. I am part of a people that elevates the values of family, education, community, mutual support. I'm part of an evolving society that seeks truth, that seeks self-improvement and peaceful coexistence. I adhere to a religion that seeks God through science and contemplation, values free inquiry and truth-telling, elevates kindness just a little more than justice, and scales religiousness by deeds, not words. I have a community that will care for me and my children if I get lost or sick. A country that might send a rescue team if I get hijacked or buried in an earthquake. A country that might just do that for our neighbors around the world. I am part of a people that so values diversity of political thought that we cannot enforce our own views on ourselves, let alone anyone else. A people that has the power only to impress, but not impose. I am part of a people, part of a nation that believes every human being should have all the best that life and the world has to offer, and is eager to collaborate and share. We build good Jewish schools and support public education, promote literacy, bring healthcare, housing, education, court-ordered justice to all of our neighbors. We do that in our professions, and we do that after work in our spare time. We want our Jewish criminals to do teshuvah, and we try to keep our kids far from sin. We believe, as Rabbi Spider-Man says, with great privilege comes great responsibility. That Jewish privilege is something not everyone has. The happiness, wellness, the love, the satisfaction, the hope, the prosperity, the purpose, the holiness, the goodness that I enjoy flows from my Jewish privilege.